Welcome to the Tech Heroes podcast. Hello, Charles and Emma. I'd love to do a quick round of introductions so everyone can get to know y'all a bit. So please introduce yourself, your role at Intuit, and just as an icebreaker, are you an early bird or a night owl? And we'll start with Charles and then Emma.
My name is Charles. I'm a university recruiter. I've been at Intuit, as a consultant for about 5 or 6 years. And then, after being here for so long, I was like, yes, this is the culture. If I'm here this long, I want to stay in. So I became a full-time employee back in 2016, working within the university career space and love it. I mean, it's just so much energy and, so much great talent and so many great partners to work with. I work here in the Mountain View location, and I support a lot of our QuickBooks solutions in our small business self-employed group. And if I'm an early bird, late bird, it depends on what time of the year. I do get up and go to the gym every morning around 5:30 or 6, but yeah, I know. I had to lose a lot of that COVID weight. And there was a lot of banana nut bread going on during that time during the Tiger King days, right? And then so I had to get back, had to get on the treadmill and run and lift. But lately I've been staying up till like 1 o'clock in the morning just because it's summertime and I can't fall asleep and everything else. So yeah. But yeah, so I kind of go. It just depends on what time of the year it is.
My name is Emma. I'm an iOS engineer on QuickBooks currently. I interned back in 2018 and then interned again in 2019 before finally joining full-time in 2020. So I've been here for about 2 years full-time, plus like 6 months of internships. And I am most definitely a night owl. I go to bed late, sleep in as much as I can. Remote work's actually very conducive to that, which I appreciate.
Awesome. Thank you both for disclosing so much about your personal lives so early in a podcast for work.
I know. I realized, man, I just gave a whole lot of information. Look, he sleeps in late. He goes to the gym. He gained some weight. He ate banana bread.
It's all deeply relatable, though, right? Like, we all went through
it is. I think it really, really is. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
We've all had enough banana nut bread.
For a lifetime, for sure.
Yes.
All right. Today's podcast it's for National Intern Day. And so we're actually here today to discuss how to have like a successful internship and how to land that internship to begin with, which is why we have Emma and Charles here together. Emma was originally an intern here, as she just mentioned. And so I'm curious actually, because the story that I hear is that Charles is the recruiter that hired you. So could you tell me about how that happened? How did you end up here at Intuit? And then also, what is it that's kept you here since then?
Yeah, so I started out as a back-end web engineer or web engineer intern on QuickBooks Self-Employed. I found Intuit through the Grace Hopper Conference, which, for those who don't know, is a diversity conference for women in computing. And I was just really impressed by all the talented women I was meeting at this event. All the support and clear commitment to diversity Intuit was showing up front. So I recruited through there, got an internship offer, and sort of then was passed on to Charles to sort of lead me through that whole internship journey through both years that I was here at Intuit. And he even helped me transition into a new role when I wanted to try a different internship role. And it's been a very positive experience overall. I'd say the reason I've stuck with Intuit is sort of the same reason I joined Intuit. It's that clear commitment to diversity from the get-go. Even right now, like more than half of my engineering team is women, and that's something you don't see anywhere else in the industry, really. So I think, just seeing continued investment in women in tech, minorities in tech is something that's so important to me and is the reason I see Intuit as a place that I'm welcome and can find my community.
Agree. That's so important. I also have had the experience of like having been the one woman on a team. It's not the most fun time. So I'm really glad that you've had that experience.
I was hoping Emma was going to say, and the reason she stayed here is because Charles, he is incredible.
That too.
He is awesome. Yeah. No, you know what? Honestly, I want to just add to that. I think the year that Emma joined, I think that intern year, we really had a drive and a focus on attracting more women in tech, in some of these businesses. And it became top of radar, and I believe that year and the year after. And we've been pretty steady with it. Like at least 48 to 50% of our engineers in tech have been women. So it was awesome. And Emma got to be a part of that process. And I'm glad that was one thing that our focus drove her to come back. So that's awesome, plus me, but yeah. Yeah.
So what I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that Emma has DJ'd for an Intuit event before.
Yeah.
Does that have anything to...
Several.
Several.
Charles, did
But,
you have a hand in that? Is that like how this, like,
Well,
what was
you
the
know what?
story?
Charles is like my hype man.
Yes, I am definitely a big hype man for her. I tell her all the time I'm so proud of her. You don't understand, like from her articles that are getting published, on top places to videos. So Emma's name has come up multiple times in some of our discussions in our recruiting meetings. And but whenever we're looking for like somebody for an event or whatnot, I'm like, oh, what about like Emma? And so she's been to a few things, and I've seen some of her work. And then like me and another recruiter, her name is Gabrielle Woody. We'll chat. I'm like, oh my god, did you see this girl? Like, oh my gosh, I was like, she's the best. Like, I love Emma. So yes.
And the love is mutual, because I feel like every time, Charles or Gabby reach out to me to speak on a panel or to come help out with recruiting events, I'm like all in, because we've just had such a very strong relationship, and both have like that same mission in mind of how we want to help recruit people and just how we can help cultivate the best possible experience for our interns.
That's such good energy to have, and I love that that you're continuing to like build this relationship and like be helpful to each other, I guess. That kind of energy can be a little harder to find with the I think you see it the most with interns and new grads, and then it starts to kind of peter out as people like spend longer in the role.
And I think there's some really great leaders who really push for that. But we do, when we go on campus, we're looking for, people who are energetic, people who are engaging, people who have great experiences, and people who can communicate effectively, the brand, as well as their experience to people entice people to see really what it's like to work here. So Emma's just one of the top individuals to do that. So yeah.
Yeah. It does sound like Emma had like a uniquely wonderful experience. So what would your tips be, like both of you, what tips would you give to interns to get the most out of their experience? I mean, where we're at right now is about halfway, the midpoint for a lot of people who are currently having their internships, and a lot of internships still to come in the coming summers, obviously, people planning for that already. So anyone who's like planning around that, trying to conclude their internships, what are your top tips for current and future interns?
Well, I'll give my perspective from a recruiter perspective on just some of the things I would suggest is don't wait. I'm not sure what people are waiting for, if they're waiting to their junior year, their senior year, or they're waiting to get their master's. I would say the sooner the better. Even if you're coming in from high school and you're going into high school, start. And I say start looking only because it gives you an idea. Even if you don't get a role, you understand the experience, and understand the journey. And as you're learning, you'll learn the tips and the tricks and get advice from people around you, and you'll start joining, you'll start getting better at the process. And so I say start looking earlier, even if it's your sophomore, going to your junior year, or your junior going to your senior, don't wait till you go back to school. Start networking with the current people that you're working with, and start networking with people that are on LinkedIn and other places that that had opportunities at places that you wanted to work, primarily Intuit. But with that said, I'd also say, find an environment that's going to be conducive to learning and growing. I think Intuit is probably one of the best places for anybody who's coming early into their career for an opportunity. And I think, you have to take those things in consideration and ask people what their experience was. You don't want to just get thrown to an opportunity and you feel like, you're not part of the culture, that you don't have any teammates, or maybe if you're the only woman on the team and you don't see that there's any initiative to grow that, that space, of diversity, on teams or at that company, then you have to take those things all into consideration. Just don't be interviewed, interview them and find out where can you really grow. And I think that goes a long way.
An interview is a two-way street, 100%.
Yes.
Important tip.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Emma, what are your top tips?
I always tell interns that just being an intern is your superpower. Like, once you tell people you're an intern, they'll just go out of their way to come and help you, whether that means setting up a coffee chat with you, giving advice on a project that you're working on, or just sharing their career journeys and you learning from their career journeys. So my biggest tip is just, once you get that internship, don't be afraid to reach out to anyone around you, whether that's your engineers, your designers, your leaders, even like people 2 levels above you or 3 levels. It doesn't matter, because everyone here, especially at Intuit, is so inviting and just happy to speak to interns, because we want to make your experience, the best and most memorable that we can. So yeah, definitely take that to use that to your advantage, foster those relationships, and you never know, that could end up becoming your next mentor, your next future manager or coworker, years down the line.
That's definitely also the top tip I give we run a new hire onboarding thing that we also do for interns here called Dive Intuit. And definitely the top tip that I always hear me or any other instructor give is ask questions, set up coffee chats, get all of this information out of people, and they are so happy to help you. So I love that you had that experience too, Emma. On both sides, you've done both now.
Yes.
You've been the mentor and the mentee, right?
Yeah.
We've talked a little bit about being a current intern, how can you get the most out of this experience? But we haven't really talked about the earlier part of that funnel, which is how do you even get that internship to begin with, which can be really intimidating, right, for anyone who's kind of new to this process or maybe a minority in this process. So what are some misconceptions or tips that people should know when they're getting into this hiring process of trying to get an internship?
So I think a lot of people have this misconception that experience is just paid experience, and that's what you're going to put on your resume. Like, I'm only going to put experience on there if I got paid for it, right? Or if I was an intern. But keep in mind that, if you're in engineering or if you want to be in tech and you've been for the past few weeks, working and building an app for a friend or doing something for somebody or creating something, like, create a GitHub, like, put that stuff like into a place where people can actually go look. That's experience. Just because it's not paid does not mean it's experience. And if it's experience, where does it go? It goes on your resume. And a lot of people will leave that information out, right? They won't put that information in there. I think the other big misconception is like, I won't apply to a position only because I see the requirements for the intern and they're asking for all of that, all this information and they're looking for all these requirements. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're not qualified. I think the biggest misconception is that, that I hear, and this is just a cultural thing that, I'm not going to apply because I don't think I fit. Well, there's a higher percentage of men who will just apply to these positions, but a lot of times women won't apply to those positions just because they might feel like, oh, my skill sets aren't there. And there's a whole study on that. And we're not going to go down that path. But these are just some of the misconceptions that just come top of mind for me. And then also, it doesn't matter what school you go to. Yes, of course, if you got Harvard Law and you're going to be a lawyer and that's what, that firm is always looking for, obviously, right? Or if, you're looking to be a doctor, they're looking for Stanford grads and the whole place is filled with Stanford grads because they're medical. Okay, I understand. But obviously, if you're looking in tech, whether it's, I'm looking to be an intern or I'm going back to school because I want to get into tech and I'm going to a boot camp, I already got a master's, but I'm going to go back into tech versus finance. Like, you can still do that. Like, there's no hesitation to put these things on your resume and still apply to the roles, especially if they're internships. They're not looking for people who have years of experience. They're looking for people to gain experience with the hopes that we can attain you to make you grow in our area. So I don't know. Those are just my biggest things is like, don't hesitate, just apply. Of course, within how many days, like I'm not going to apply for, an intern for a medical role, but I'm just saying like, just go ahead, and apply, and see what happens. And if not, just make connections.
Yeah, and your point earlier just now about like if you have work, even if it's unpaid work or if it was especially open source work, just put it on your GitHub. That's a huge point, right? That sometimes almost it's more important what your GitHub looks like than what your school pedigree is, right?
Exactly.
It really reflects well on you when you have stuff on your GitHub. So that's huge.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that, Charles. What about you, Emma? What are your tips and misconceptions?
Sure. Yeah. I think now that I've been working for a while, I've gotten to see the other side of the interview process. I've interviewed new grad candidates, I've interviewed internship candidates, and what most young candidates don't realize is that the interviewers genuinely want you to succeed. I think, and I felt this way too, when you're a young student and the process is just so competitive and very intimidating, you might feel that these interviews are meant to eliminate you or just harshly evaluate you, but the truth is that a good interviewer they're just looking to qualify you. They're not trying to disqualify you. They want you to get this role. So I would just keep in mind while you're interviewing that if your interviewer is trying to give you certain cues or maybe is nudging you in a certain direction, really take that to heart and pay attention because most likely they're pushing you in some sort of direction to get you to say the right things, to hit the rubric, to hit certain criteria so that they can give you the green thumbs up, right? So yeah, the interviewer is on your side. They're your ally. Use that and pay close attention to that.
Yeah, usually when an interview interrupts you with a question or a tip, it's important to pay close attention to what they're saying. That's such a good point. Yeah, we're here to root for y'all. Like, we don't want to run 50 interviews. We want to run 2 and find both of you and hire both of you, right? We want to save our time too. Let's say like you've been through this hiring process. We have our tips now about how to get the most out of your internship. But something I think that a lot of people come into internships and any kind of early career type role is it's about self-discovery, right? Like learning whether or not this is the right thing for you to be doing. Whether it's like career mobility options, right? Like I'm a tech intern right now. Should I do product management later? Like these kinds of open questions. It's all about exploring yourself and your preferences. So how would you say, what are your tips for maximizing self-discovery specifically during your internship and exploring and experimenting?
Yeah, I think the great thing about internships specifically is they are one of the best outlets for self-discovery because it's a short-term opportunity to try out something new, and it's very, low commitment. You do this for 10 to 12 weeks and it can inform your career decisions for like years down the line. So I'd encourage interns to really self-reflect at different stages in your internship and start asking questions like, is this a company I enjoy working at? Are these people I enjoy working with? Do I like the work I'm working on? Do I like the type of work I'm given? And as you answer those questions, that'll help inform your next career move, which might be your next internship, might be your next full-time gig, might be another company. But yeah, just constantly asking like, is this a place that I feel like I fit? Or what would that place look like later down the line as I start progressing in my career?
I feel like in this, we overuse this phrase, but we're always talking about like fail fast, right? Like run cheap experiments and fail fast. What a better way to fail fast in trying to learn about your preferences as a technologist or even in the tech industry at all than to try an internship. So that's a great point. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. My last question, just one final question, is about our culture here at Intuit. So it can be daunting, as we've said, being a new intern, a new grad in this tech space. It's kind of a lot to take in, and a lot of culture shock happens as well. So I'm curious what Intuit does to make people feel a little more comfortable and like they can find their place here. It's a large company, right? We have like almost 10,000 employees or something in that ballpark. What are the cultural things that we have done to make people comfortable and help them find their place? And what are some common pitfalls from either the employer side or the employee side? What are some things to watch out for on that front?
I say the biggest thing is to have courage. And I think how we describe courage is being able to speak up, even in spaces that you don't, feel like to voice your opinion confidently, yet being humble. And I tell students all the time, keep in mind, you go to college, you go to university, you're going to whatever program you might be going into, you go into that space and you're paying to learn. And some of you are paying like hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? But when you're coming to an internship, you're getting paid to learn, right? So when you come here, it's ask questions, connect with people, ask people to shadow. Even in our internship, we provide students 10% time back to themselves so that way they can actually go, check out things and see, self-discovery about themselves and what they're really passionate about. But I think more importantly, our intern program, even though we're always rated top, I think top 5, and outside of, a specific area, but we give one of those greatest experiences, like Brad Smith used to say. He's like, we try to create an experience so profound, that you want to stay or want to keep returning back, and that's really what we do. We give everything to the students. We give everything to our interns, so that way they just have to show up and just engage. So, networking with people, and we encourage that. We build spaces for students so that way they can actually, present themselves in a positive light towards their team. And we try to create areas so that way they can actually talk to leaders. And we try to do so much just so that way they can have a great experience, so that way we entice them and we can keep them, after we've taught them, right? So that's really what it's all about. Ask questions, not fall into imposter syndrome, which is a whole completely different discussion we can go into. So that's just one of the things, it's just having that courage and being able to feel comfortable in your own skin, and keep in mind that you're getting paid to learn, and we understand that because it's an internship, not a senior software engineer or an MBA marketing, role. So
better to ask those so-called stupid questions now when you're an intern than when you're a senior software engineer and you never got that question answered. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you, Charles. What about you, Emma?
I'd say at Intuit, there's always a family here if you're willing to do the research and seek out, the right outlets for you and for your belonging. I've always felt like I belonged at Intuit, and I think a lot of that stems from just the vast options of communities that are at your disposal and you can choose to be a part of. There's like the Intuit Next Gen Network, Tech Women at Intuit, Pride Network, and just a dozen different heritage-based ERGs. And the internship...
I'm just going to pause you there. ERG stands for...
Employee Resource Group.
Yeah. I just want to make sure we're not dropping acronyms on people. Sorry, please continue.
Yeah, and then the internship team does an exceptional job to organizing events specifically for interns to get everyone together, to mingle, to make new friends, find mentors and such. And as someone who can provide like a fully remote perspective on this, because I'm fully remote now. I've met a couple remote interns. I'd say, you do have to put a little bit more effort in, but that effort's pretty minimal. It could be as simple as sending someone a Slack message like, hey, I really like your t-shirt. Like, I totally related to what you said in that meeting, or I really like mechanical keyboards too. Like, let's go set up a coffee chat and talk about it. I think finding your friends and finding your people, as long as you make that a priority or something you're willing to invest in, it'll just happen naturally.
Yeah, and I definitely feel like the culture here is that we respond very openly to that kind of thing. Like, people want 100%. To make those connections. If you ask someone for a coffee chat, like 100% of the time they will say yes. I have yet to be turned down for something like that. I would like to get to know you both as people just a little bit more, though, because I feel like I've just been asking about your jobs. So really quick, we're now in what's called the rapid fire portion of this podcast. So 3 really quick questions about you. First question, what is your favorite comfort food?
For me, that would be spam musubi. I'm Japanese American, and a lot of my family's from Hawaii, so that's like the staple food snack in between meals, sort of comfort food.
My go-to comfort food is breakfast, like things that are all things breakfast, like your French toast and your bacon and pancakes and syrup and powdered sugar and danishes.
Oh, you're making me hungry.
I
know. Like those things, like I could, if it was just breakfast all the time, just with that sweet and savory, it's like, oh my goodness, like I can have it for dinner. I'm probably gonna have that for dinner tonight. Now that I said it.
Breakfast for dinner is one of the true luxuries of existence.
Oh my gosh! Yes.
Awesome. Thank you both. Next question: a piece of helpful advice you recently received. Emma first.
Some advice I received recently was just don't be afraid to take breaks. Burnout is real, whether that's in your job or your schooling or just your personal life. So yeah, put your mental and physical health first, and yeah, don't be afraid to step away and kind of recuperate and relax a little bit.
Yeah, I like that. I was going to say, this is probably not recently, but we were just talking about this. And I've got this from my friend's father, who used to always tell him when he was younger, whose father probably told him when he was younger. And I say it to my kids all the time. Lazy people work twice as hard. Lazy people work twice as hard. You might have to think about that, but lazy people do. They work twice as hard. Why? Because they do it, halfway, and it gets done wrong, and then they have to go back and fix it all over again. So, they always work twice as hard. So just work hard and get it done the right way. It's done. So
do it right the first time. Yeah. Final question: who is your personal hero?
My personal hero is Nithya Pari. I hope she's listening. Nithya's a staff engineer on my team. Yeah, okay. And she's my mentor at Intuit, and I've grown so much in my career thanks to her guidance and overall mentorship. So love you, Nithya. Thank you so much for being my hero.
That is so sweet.
Man, I'm about to start crying, man. This is emotional, man. Because all I heard was Charles. But yeah, I totally But yeah, whoever else, yes, I totally get it. So, no, if I was to say a personal hero of mine, it would probably be my grandfather. There's a lot of people I look up to. I was gonna say Oprah, but I think my grandfather, he's over, he's over Oprah. He was just, a very, very sincere, kind individual. And he respected everybody. He had a swagger about him, and he was just really compassionate, and he just always went out of his way for individuals, So yeah, it's my grandfather, really great individual, and I just try to aspire to be like him and just give everybody that same respect as long as I'm getting respect. And it's just one of those things that he's always taught me about. So respect. So I love the man, and that's who my hero is.
Oh, I love closing with this question. I feel like I get really soft hearing about everyone's personal heroes.
Don't tell Oprah though. Don't tell Oprah.
Oh, okay. It's our secret.
She might be in the top 5 somewhere, but don't tell her. Yeah. Oprah, if you listen to this, girl, I love you.
Grandpa who? Oh my goodness. All right. Well, thank you both for your not just your expertise and your wisdom in the field of like how to have a good internship, but also your like vulnerability and the personal aspects that you've brought to the table. I think it really helps us see you as full human beings, right? Because that's what we're here to do. It's not just your work, but also who you are. So thank you very much for opening up and sharing so much about yourselves and your work. So it was amazing to connect with you today. Thank you for taking the time.
Oh, thank you, Lucy. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you for having us. This was a delight.